Welcome to the JNUC 2020 Github Gallery. Before we begin, I am pausing here for a brief moment for you to review our forward-looking statement. It will also be available for a detailed review if you'd like under Resources. I'm Jonathan Uresco, an implementation engineer here at Jamf. Members of Jamf Nation have a tremendous amount of tools and resources at their disposal. The Jamf Marketplace, Jamf Nation forums, Jamf support, and partners all supply valuable information and resources to further enhance the organization's implementation of the Jamf platform. We are thrilled to have Tyler Morgan, Erin McDonald, Josh Roskos, and Christopher Ball here to highlight just a few of these great projects and products you can find with our GitHub Gallery. The JNUC GitHub Gallery had its inaugural session as an interactive lab at JNUC 2019, and with the tremendous reception, we are bringing it back in virtual form. We are excited to offer these virtual sessions to bring you these great tools built by customers and Jamfs alike to your homes and workplaces. Our hope is these projects help pique your interest in checkout integrations, solutions, and projects throughout Jamf Nation, and maybe even inspire you to create your own. All of these projects can be found on GitHub and are free to use. Please feel free to post questions throughout the presentation and check out the Jamf Marketplace for more inspiration. Thank you and enjoy.
Hey there, thanks for choosing to tune into my Filevault Reissue tool part of the GitHub Gallery in the JNUC 2020 conference. So a little bit about me. I'm a software engineer over at Comcast. I've been with them for about 4 years, and I originally started with very little programming experience. So I knew basically HTML, style sheets, and JavaScript. That's it. So through my years at Comcast, I've actually been working on more and more open source projects. Today I'm presenting one of them, but last year I presented on Loanshark, which is another application I built on the Swift platform. And my first open source project was actually with Francois. He actually works over at Apple right now. He actually developed Splashbuddy, which is a deployment screen similar to DEP Notify, or there's a few other ones that are out there. So I worked on that, developed my understanding of the Swift language, and built on top of that, and I am here today debuting another tool that I built off of the same knowledge that I developed over the years. So just as a kind of a inspiration, I highly recommend, if you have any idea of what you want to do, if there's a problem, if there's a solution that you're looking for, dive in, learn some programming. It's going to help you in the end. Or, you don't need to know much programming, just dive in and help. So kind of a little bit of a background of this solution. The problem I found was we use Jamf Pro here, and the problem was the recovery key was not fully, I guess, it wasn't fully stored in the MDM solution. So Jamf Pro didn't always have the recovery key, nor did it always have a valid recovery key. So we developed this tool to provide a meaningful way to prompt the user to actually enter their credentials and reissue the recovery key in a clean UI-oriented way. So the solution is mainly just your regular Swift application. It just creates an abstract layer of the command line level, so the user is used to what to expect, and he can provide some more feedback to the end user without having them run the terminal, which a lot of users in most applications aren't used to or comfortable doing so. So there's some prerequisites. You need to have a Filevault redirection profile installed. This is just so your MDM solution can actually grab an encrypted version of your Filevault recovery key on the individual level. You have to make sure Filevault's turned on, of course, because if Filevault's not turned on, then there's no need to reissue a recovery key. And you also have to make sure the secure token is active for the user that you're reissuing the recovery key for, or an administrator that you're using as a local administrator account to attempt a silent reissue. Mainly because in Catalina and Mojave and Big Sur, we're all going to have some issues where if the secure token is not active, then you can't interact with Filevault. So let me go over a little bit about how you would reissue a recovery key manually, and the reason why I thought abstracting that from the user would be best for user experiences in the end. So we're just going to run a command, sudo fde setup change recovery key -personal, and that will reissue my personal recovery key locally stored on the machine. And it's going to prompt me to enter my username. I'm going to enter Johnny Appleseed, and then it's going to prompt me for a password for the user. Now, this does not provide any feedback. It's your traditional secure input to the terminal. So this is fine for us that are more oriented in terminal, but some of the other users aren't comfortable in typing. They might type it wrong. Depending on how your setup is, multiple failed attempts may actually lock their account out, just bad experience. So now, if the password is correct and the user is correct, it will reissue a recovery key. And it gives you this little blurb. And that is the new recovery key. So that there is what you can do. Now, scaling it up. You have where you can use Apple Remote Desktop. You can run the command using the Unix command section of the Apple Remote Desktop. You can do scripting via local administrator with a static password, so you can SSH into the machine, run the command, and exit. Or you can prompt the user for their password using dialog boxes. That's bad practice because you end up with malware and malicious applications in general that prompt for stuff using the native dialog boxes. So what we ended up doing was we developed a native macOS application, and it fully enhances the user experience compared to manually typing everything in. It captures the logo of the company. You can fully customize that. You can also provide a more info link, which we do for security reasons. Since we are asking people to enter your username and password, we have a company portal that we just tell them to use the search option and actually look at what the results are and actually go through and go seeking it. So they know that they can't just click a link and open up a browser. They actually have to go searching for it on a known secure platform, because we don't want people entering passwords and potentially compromising their credentials. So this application actually allows you to reissue recovery keys on scale. You can just package it up into a little package, throw it up on your MDM solution, and push it out and run a command. It does allow silent reissuing. So if you have a local administrator account using a static password, you can actually reissue a recovery key silently where the user won't be prompted. Now, the application would still prompt if the silent reissuing does fail. So kind of giving you an idea of what our setup is right now, we have our Jamf Pro up in the cloud. We have where it checks to see if a valid key is stored. Now, this could be, no recovery key stored, or the recovery key stored has been invalidated for other reasons. Some of the reasons could be that the user reissued the recovery key. Another one could be that they decrypted the computer or the hard drive and then re-encrypted. So it checks to see if the recovery key is valid. If it is, it does nothing. If it's not, then it adds it to a smart group. And then the smart group is scoped to run a policy for the Filevault Reissue application. it tries to reissue it silently using our own local administrator, using some of the credential stuff that we have behind the scenes, which uses password rotations. So it checks to see if it's successful. If it is, then it performs an inventory. With Jamf Pro, it requires 3 inventories before it shows up as a valid key. So we have the policy that runs once a week, while the inventory performs every day. So theoretically, in 3 days, it should show up as a valid recovery key. If it's not successful, then it prompts the user for their information and tries to issue the recovery key that way. If it fails, it does keep bringing itself forward on top of all other windows, so the user can't really get past it. I mean, there are ways to get past it. You just do Command W or Command Q to actually quit the application. But the user would enter their credentials, they would hit enter, it would reissue the recovery key, give you a nice little pretty prompt, and then the prompt would then close the application. Once the application is closed, it would then perform an inventory, and as I said before, it needs to do 3 inventories before the recovery key is valid. So in about 3 days in our environment, we would see that the recovery key is in fact valid. So the deployment of it is fairly easy. As I mentioned, there's a lot of configurable stuff. You have logos, you have what text to put, placeholders, more information buttons, more information dialog boxes. All that is able to be configured via the configuration profile. You can fully customize the package. So you might want to include your logo, you might want to include maybe an HTML document, whatever you want, you can include right in that package. So once you install the package, it would automatically run a few things and prompt the user. One of the big things is the customizing the package is where you're going to really customize how you're going to launch this, which would possibly include local administrator accounts with usernames and passwords. Ideally, you don't want to store the passwords locally, but if you have a credential storing system, like a vault of some sort, you can include that in your script to actually pull it down and pass that as a parameter to the Filevault Reissue script. And once it installs the package and it's finished, the user would then be prompted with the Filevault Reissue window if it's unsuccessful for reissuing it silently. After that, it would then run an inventory. Ideally, that would be in the policy, but you can also do 3 inventories in the script at the very end to make sure that you have the valid recovery key off the bat. So that was all I had for the Filevault Reissue. Again, this was a problem that I saw in our environment, and through my knowledge that I've learned over the years, I kind of figured out what needed to be done and how to abstract it. There are a lot of people in the Mac admin community that have knowledge of programming, but not all of us started that way. So if you are interested in programming, if you are interested in finding solutions, feel free to join the Mac admin Slack, poke around, find a language that works for you. Personally, I've been knee-deep in Ruby, working on Ruby JSS. I know some Python. My colleague works almost strictly in Python and Bash. You have AppleScript. There's really a lot of different languages out there that can really help with automation and also help with your day-to-day operations. And who knows, maybe if you are interested in programming or interested in making a tool, hopefully we'll see you on the Mac admin Slack and see how you can provide a solution for a problem that you see in your environment and how everyone else can contribute to it. So there are some resources I wanted to leave with you. So you can ping me directly if you need to, post presentation, if you have a question, concern, or you just want to chat. My handle on Mac admin Slack is CyberTunnel. Same thing with GitHub. And then if you want to take a look at this project right now, point your phone at that QR code. It will automatically open it up. and you can download it on your computer. You can browse through some of the stuff, look at the README, understand how to get it going, and you can get it started today. And I wanted to thank you guys for listening. There's a lot of folks that are smart and have really been contributing to the community through the GitHub. And hopefully there's a lot of other projects that you see in the gallery that you can take to your work, to your home, or you can possibly contribute to. And lastly, I wanted to thank Jamf for asking me to speak on the project that I've been working on. And hopefully we'll see you guys next year.
So this is GitHub Gallery Part 2, the CIS STIGs macOS benchmarks. Hello all, my name is Erin McDonald and I am the Partner Program Manager here at Jamf. So my part of our discussion today is in regards to CIS STIGs macOS benchmarks and one way that we can audit or remediate against these benchmarks. We'll briefly cover what they are and what we can do. CIS and STIGs are security benchmarks that organizations can use to secure their technology. Their sources differ, but their goals are essentially the same, ensuring that devices in your fleet are secured based on their recommendations. So let's start with CIS. This is a non-profit security organization. All benchmarks are built with community and volunteer contribution. We'll be talking about macOS benchmarks today, but they offer multiple benchmarks for operating systems, server software, network configurations, and mobile devices. STIGs are provided by DISA, the Defense Information Systems Agency. They provide the same guidance on platforms that CIS does. However, since they're directed at entities that handle governmental secrets, they're often more restrictive in their rules. For example, STIGs state that with macOS, you must remove or disable any temporary or emergency accounts from the Mac computer within 72 hours. CIS does not. CIS has 95 benchmarks, while there are 120 STIGs for macOS. Either one you choose, that's quite a few things to keep track of. Before we can even consider audit and remediate, the first thing that you have to do is read the docs. CIS states that their benchmarks are guidances, and one size does not fit all. Review the implications, and then talk with stakeholders within your organization. You may need to have different settings for different teams, such as developers or lab Mac computers. There may be a chance that what you're pushing out for settings is a complete sea change for all of your users. So communicating to them so they understand what's happening and why. Lastly, let's identify some helpful canaries. Get a group of UAT testers for feedback before all of this goes production-wide. So here are the links for the GitHub repos for CIS and STIGs. I'm in the middle of building out the STIGs for 10.15, so right now the currently available one is 10.14. So if we break it all down, essentially we're looking at 3 scripts, 2 extension attributes, and if you're working with CIS, it's 4 configuration profiles and 21 configuration profiles for the STIGs. The workflow for the deployment is essentially the same, but for this, we're just going to look at deploying out benchmarks for CIS. After you've reviewed those benchmarks, we're going to configure script number 1. If you wish to audit on a particular benchmark, you want to make sure that we uncomment the true value variable and comment out the false value variable. Vice versa, if we don't want to audit on this, just to disable it, we comment out the true and uncomment the false. Next, we'll bring in our extension attributes. The count extension attribute should be set as an integer, and the list extension attribute should be set as a string. Now, you're going to want to review those configuration profiles. By default, if we can remediate via configuration profile, we're going to. And there may be some settings in here that you don't want turned on. If you want to make your own changes, Matthew Mitchell last year provided a presentation about rolling your own configuration profiles. After adding these profiles into your Jamf Pro, scope them out to your UAT devices. On to our policies. So we're going to create one that just on the outset will audit our UAT team. Add scripts 1 and 2 and ensure that they are set to run before any other actions within the policy. Add in also the update inventory. Set the frequency to once per computer and the trigger to check-in. After you've gone and had all those devices run through that particular policy, review the extension attributes and see what your results are. Now that we have all of this data, we can build advanced searches and smart groups off of this. To use the count extension attribute, what you can do to find compliance is determine whether or not that value is 0, as in none of the benchmarks that that device is run against, they've failed. If there's a benchmark that you care very, very much about, you can use the list extension attribute and look for items like that benchmark, such as disabling internet sharing. Now that we know what we know, we can remediate. Either edit that first existing policy or create a brand new one. We're going to add script number 3 and script 2 again, but this time, instead of having it run before, this second run of script 2 is going to run after. After these are run, review those extension attributes and see how things are progressing. Something to note, some things we audit can't be remediated against. For example, I can absolutely audit if system integrity protection has been disabled, but programmatically, there's no way to change that unless I lay hands on that Mac computer. Or there are some things that work out better as a different workflow, such as Filevault enablement. You probably want to have that happen predictably, so running it in this workflow doesn't necessarily make sense. So I hope I've provided something helpful in getting your devices up to those benchmarks. And here are the resources that I talked about in this part.
Hello, everyone. My name is Josh Roskos, and I am a Senior Enterprise Customer Success Manager here at Jamf. You might recognize me from some other popular GitHub repos, such as macOS Upgrade. But today, we're here to talk about logCollection. We'll start out by diving into what the problem is that this workflow is trying to solve, how we're solving it, as well as diving into the code that makes it all work, and finally, where you can find the solution and how to get it all set up for yourself. All right, so why did I create this workflow? As you're all aware, there are countless log files on every device, and many times, these log files can aid us greatly in determining what is happening on a user's Mac when they run into problems. Even before COVID-19, our users were not typically near IT. If we needed logs, we'd have to establish a screen sharing session to gather those files, or send a technician out to do a desk side visit. This is all very intrusive to the user and extremely time-consuming for both them and your staff. Now, in the new world we are in, where users are all working remote from their own homes, we just can't send a technician to their house. And depending on what you've used in the past for screen sharing, it may not work for those off the corporate network. So, just how do we capture these logs from a user's Mac without disrupting their own business-critical functions they provide? What if there was an entirely new and better way of gathering these log files? What if we could silently retrieve the needed log files from the user's machine without them even really noticing? What if those files were uploaded to Jamf Pro, where you, the admin or technician, could easily retrieve them? Well, now you can, with logCollection. This workflow can be used either via policy scope to a specific Mac or via self-service, quickly gathering the needed logs and uploading them to Jamf Pro where you can easily retrieve them. So that's amazing, but really, how does it all work? We first need to upload the script from the GitHub repo, which I'll direct you all to here shortly. From there, we'll use a policy inside Jamf Pro to distribute it. When this policy is scoped to either a specific machine to run or when called via self-service, it will create an archive of all the log files you specified in the policy config. By default, I do recommend the Jamf log, system.log, and installer.log. Now, you may be wondering what the asterisk is for. Well, by adding an asterisk to the end of the log file path, it will also grab any rollover log files, allowing you to make sure you get the data you need. Okay, so once we've gotten the archive built, we simply upload to Jamf Pro underneath attachments for that device record. Now, let's take a look behind the scenes to see how all the magic of this works. Diving into this wonderful script, a whopping 20 lines. 20 lines, that's it. Sometimes simpler is just better. But let's break it down by section to go over what each respective block accomplishes. First, let's take a look at the user variable block. Here, we're really just specifying some variables that are needed to complete the script. The Jamf Pro URL is the FQDN to your Jamf Pro server. This is the URL where you access the admin interface to create policies and deploy applications. Next up is the Jamf Pro user and Jamf Pro pass variables. These variables are for a local Jamf Pro user that has the required permissions needed for the script. And if you want to use encrypted strings to help obfuscate the credentials, there is a version of that already ready to go and set up for you on my GitHub repo, along with the specific permissions needed for that local Jamf Pro user account. Lastly, the log files variable. This variable is where you can actually configure the log files you are wanting to collect, such as the previously mentioned Jamf log, installer log, and system log files. All of these are recommended to be configured on the policy in Jamf Pro and not in the script itself. Let's take a look at the next block, system variables. Here we are just setting up a few requirements for uploading the archive to Jamf Pro. First, we need to determine what the serial number of the Mac we are running this on is. We'll use this to query the classic API to determine the Jamf Pro computer ID number. Once we have that, we'll determine who the login user is, the current computer host name, and the date and time we're running the script. These variables will be used to create the file name for the archive that will upload to Jamf Pro. All right, let's take a look at the collection of the log files itself. Here you can see we're specifying the variables from the previous block to create that archive file name, which is computer host name dash current user dash the current date and time .zip. We'll then use that along with the zip binary to create an archive zip file in the private temp directory with all the log files we specified inside that policy. All right, great. Now we have the log files compressed in an archive. Let's look at how we can upload them. First things first, we need to use that mySerial variable from earlier to query the classic API and determine what the Jamf Pro computer ID is. Once we have that, we can go ahead and upload the archive as an attachment to that device record inside Jamf Pro. And for that last block, well, we'll just clean things up by deleting the local copy of the archive we had created and setting a nice clean exit. It's always good to be good stewards. Really, that's it. A very simple workflow to accomplish a task we all have to deal with. Sure, we could add some additional error handling, but the end result is the same. If any part fails, it all fails, and doesn't create any extra work or issues for you. However, it is open source under the MIT license. So if you do find something, please submit an issue or pull request on GitHub, and I'll be happy to take a look. All right, so we've uploaded the log files. Let's take a look inside Jamf Pro and see how that actually looks. Here you can see we are reviewing a computer record for a VM I have in my test Jamf Pro instance. Under attachments, we have our compressed archive here containing the log files as specified in my policy. In this case, you can see the name of the archive is the hostname -admin -date and time from when it was created. As I mentioned earlier, you can also make this available via self-service in a help desk or first aid type category and direct your users there as needed. Okay, so you have this workflow all set up and it seems working great. But as always, what's the fine print? All right, so first, the Jamf Pro database is not designed to house a large number of files. That is why we have a file share and cloud distribution points available in Jamf Pro. So be sure to delete the attachment once you've downloaded it. Do not scope this policy to all computers unless you're creating it as a self-service policy. Do not set the policy to reoccurring check-in. In the end, we want to be good stewards of the database. We want to keep this all nice and tidy. If we don't, well, you could end up with an upset Jamf Pro environment. And then you're going to be calling me or Jamf support. On top of that, this could lead to some very upset staff. So to help with all this, I've put together an extension attribute you can also use to run reports and create smart groups based on the number of attachments on a device record, which you can also find in the GitHub repo. And with that, you can find the entire workflow and all the instructions for getting logCollection set up on GitHub using the QR code on the screen, as well as a copy of this presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions now in the chat. Otherwise, feel free to open up an issue on GitHub. Thank you very much, and I hope you all have a great day.